Welcome to my presentation. It is Access in Mental Health Deserts. I am David Kendrick Jr. Two things you know about me. I am a Purple Heart veteran. I served 5 years in the United States Army as a Cavalry Scout. Cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And I also represent NAMI, Georgia. I began my career with NAMI about 2 years ago. I just started as a volunteer in DeKalb County. If any of you guys know the city of Decatur, that's DeKalb. So started by doing great things there in Atlanta. And then as I progressed, I became vice president of NAMI DeKalb, and then eventually became co-president of NAMI DeKalb. However, I had to give that position up because I enrolled in a program called AmeriCorps Vista, where I volunteered as a paid volunteer from the government and started working for the NAMI Georgia office. And I also am our Georgia representative for our Family Members Service. Never get this right. Let me look at my shirt here. It is our Service Members, Veterans, and Families Council. So what I do in the state of Georgia is try to find any mental health issue that's going on that involves us, and I try my best to represent the NAMI in the state of Georgia for veterans and just see what we can do to come up with a solution for that mental health issue. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get into the presentation here. Let's get into it. My lived experience. We share a lot of things with NAMI, with our lived experience with NAMI. And my lived experience when it comes to my access and mental health desert starts in my hometown of Rochester, New York. So I got out of the Army in 2012. And when I moved back home, it was my first time finding out what a mental health desert really was. So Rochester, right there, and we had no VA hospital in Rochester. So I was 23 years old and I didn't know anything about the civilian world because I had joined the Army when I was still in high school. Came back to Rochester with 2 bullet wounds in my leg, severe muscle atrophy, nerve damage, and some severe PTSD, and a family that had no clue about the military lifestyle, about anything relating to the military, how to treat me, even where to get me services. They had no clue. So I struggled. And in this desert that I was on, even though Rochester is a big metropolitan city, there's no real veteran organization there. There's no real veteran presence, at least back in 2012 when I got out. So my options were, first, if you even want to get your PTSD diagnosed, you have to drive either an hour down to Buffalo or go an hour and a half to Syracuse. Now, another reason why I struggled, I had no money. I had no car, and I'm on this island, and I didn't know exactly what to do with myself. I didn't know where to get services from. And so what I did, like with a lot of veterans that come home and they deal with PTSD, I just drank and drank and drank and drank and drank. Which will lead me to my next slide. Coping skills. How do we cope when we don't have access to mental health? And these are 2 reports that I found. This is from the CNN report, is 2022, and this report from the National Institute on Drug Abuse is from 2023. And I can send these out if anybody's interested, but what it showed, marijuana use and binge drinking reached historic highs among people 35 to 50. And that includes the opioid crisis, and then suicide deaths reached a record high in the US in 2012. And this is how people were coping with mental health. And as we know in the country with the opioid crisis, that's worsening as we're getting more and more illegal drugs coming in, and we have people dying from fentanyl. So I fell into this same type of treatment or the same type of coping when I got home. I drank and drank and drank and drank. And I had nobody from my family to help me. None of my battle buddies were able to help me. I was still losing friends in Iraq and in Afghanistan during this time. So in 2010, I did try suicide myself. And here's how isolated and how little was known about the treatment. I went to a hospital in Rochester called Rochester General Hospital. And I'm in there and wake up in a padded room after a suicide attempt, drinking and trying to take a bunch of opioid or Percocets with vodka. And I was in the hospital for about 4 hours. My parents came and they just let me go. No resources, no veteran resources, no, hey, parents, here's where your son can get the help. Only thing that I got when I got out of the hospital was a $3,000 bill. That's the only thing that I got. No resources, no help. And so my parents, my mom, my dad, and my stepdad, and the rest of my family, they didn't even know what resources to get for me. So as I move on, as I got older and I moved down here to Georgia, I found that a lot of people are still coping in these ways. All right. So what I did in preparation for this presentation here, and this is something I'm very proud of, I went to my state office and to our ED, Kim Jones, who gave a wonderful presentation earlier. And I said, I want to try to do something special. We need data to figure out what the issues are. So because you don't know what to treat unless you know what the issues are. So we need some tangible data so we can know how to act. So I went to the state office and I'm so proud of this. I asked in his survey a couple of questions here. Do you already attend a NAMI program or service? What do you do in this program? What type of program do you go to? Is it family to family? Is it peer to peer? Is it homecoming, or Homefront, which I am a Homefront instructor? Do you have access to mental health care outside of NAMI? And that was the most important question that I had, that I wanted to ask the people in the state of Georgia, because we're a nonprofit, all of our services are free. But in the city of Atlanta, there are people struggling with so many other different things on the island, including affordable housing. One-bedroom apartment costs $1,800 there. It's horrible. And then to continue, if it wasn't for the NAMI program that you attend, do you know where you would receive access to mental health care? And then I asked, because on this island, when I was in Rochester, I had no access to internet, no money, no transportation. So I said, please rate the following barriers to mental health care in your area. Transportation, quality options, because this room is very diverse. And in this room, when it comes to mental health care, sometimes a woman may want a woman doctor. Somebody black may want a black doctor. You may want somebody that you're just comfortable talking to. So are there quality, affordable options where you are in the state of Georgia? Is there a lack of local providers? Is there an understanding of technology? Perfect example, we were at Taco Bell, 16th Street Mall, and there was a kiosk. You couldn't order the food at the desk. And someone there said, I don't know how to use this. And so a lot of our providers in Georgia love to use Zoom and all these streaming technology services and things like that to access care, or even something as simple as scheduling your appointment online. And some people didn't know how to do that. And then the number one thing really is internet access, because what we learned during COVID, internet is a necessity. You need it. The results came in slow, and unfortunately, I got a majority of the results after it was time for me to present or to submit my presentation. But for the people that did have access to mental health care, in my survey, we gave them questions or options to leave responses. And someone said, most Georgia providers will not provide virtual services to those out of state. I traveled extensively, and these outdated policies have limited my access to providers. I require constant virtual support, and Georgia's providers are typically not up to the task. Then somebody else in the open-ended question or answer said, just being able to afford the cost of insurance is a huge barrier, much less pay the deductible. Insurance for most people now are just catastrophic plans. Moving on. What steps have been taken to address mental health emergencies in your area? And then we had a few long open-ended responses here. First one, I am not aware of any, but I'm hoping to become more informed citizen and advocate. And then we have more and more responses where people work with, we have a police department called the Rockdale Police Department. In Georgia, a lot of things are separated by counties, including the laws and who accepts what service or what is very confusing. Who accepts what insurance? A lot of people have a lot of issues with trying to find a provider. And then the last one here, which is, I'm just going to read it first. We have many recovery, long-term living programs. However, they are associated with addiction issues. We have no place for people with a diagnosed mental health condition to have a long-term living type situation in our county. Yes, we do have an outpatient program that is somewhat effective. The substance abuse disorder treatment places do not want to be available for people with mental health diagnosis. They say it is too difficult to manage having to support people with medication, and they do not have the education about mental disorders or how to support people with them. And that's a mouthful there. And I talked to a couple of people about this exact situation. And when I went through what I went through in 2010, the stay, hey, we have emergency patients who have physical injuries. And there's something that's called parity, where if I have a broken arm, you can see I have a broken arm. I can give you medication for your broken arm, give you a recovery plan, some physical therapy, you'll get sent along your way. But what about what's going on up here? How do we treat this? It's going to take time. And in our state, what I found out from this survey is the doctors don't want to take that time to find out what's going on. And then with the opioid crisis, they don't want to give you medication for it. And so that leads me back to a few slides earlier. Well, guess what I think my options are on this island? If you don't want to support me, I'm going to drink. These become realistic options when you go in and say, hey, something's wrong. I'm not feeling like myself. I know, I don't know how it is. I just got a regular doctor at Emory Hospital in Georgia. But when you go to the VA, they ask you two questions. Do you feel homicidal or suicidal? And sometimes the answer may be yes, but they never expect anybody to say yes. And then when somebody does say yes, they go, oh. Yeah, oh. Well, we don't treat that here. Good luck. And it broke my heart. It really did break my heart when this happened in the city of Atlanta. Because this was a soldier right here who honestly could have been me. Could have been me. Looking for medication with his mom on this island in this big city of Atlanta. Couldn't get the medication that he wanted to. Was getting turned away from the VA. And because, like I said earlier, you could see somebody with a physical broken arm, but somebody that has a damaged brain, it's hard to be diagnosed, especially at the VA, because they're understaffed. And now the veterans like myself who went to Iraq when we were 19, 20, 21, now we're 37, 39, 40, and we have years of undiagnosed trauma. And that island that we're on, it's just smaller. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And one day this veteran snapped. He went to the office. He went to a doctor's office for a medication that he thought he needed along with his mother. He was late to the appointment. He got turned away and he came back with a rifle or with a handgun, shot and killed the receptionist, shot two other people. And then there was a manhunt on in the city for this guy. All because he knew what was wrong with him, but he didn't know how to advocate for himself. His mother didn't know how to advocate. All he knew is something's wrong with me. I don't feel the same. And imagine how it feels when you ever feel yourself screaming out for help, but nobody's listening? Or you find one person that knows or that can sympathize with you and say, damn, I understand it, but why don't they understand it? And you have to go through so many different steps to get what you need. I can use myself for an example. After getting shot by a sniper, trying to commit suicide and everything like that, for those of you who know about the VA ratings, I'm not even at 100%. I'm not even rated at 100% yet. And still been fighting. And especially in our veteran community, there's no reason why a veteran who went overseas and saw all the darkness of war, the IEDs, losing friends, me getting shot by a sniper, myself, have to get a lawyer to fight on their behalf, spend money that we don't have. And those are some of the options that we have. And then over here to the left, at the VA, in the parking lot, there were no fences. And then what ended up happening, veterans would literally be coming out of their appointments, nobody's gonna treat me, and commit suicide right then and there on the spot at the hospital. And what does that do to a community? Now, $850,000 fence in Atlanta. Imagine having to install a fence for veterans who are there at the place you're supposed to receive care, but are committing suicide there because they're screaming out for help, crying for help. And then when they don't get it, this is what happens on the right side. This is what our island looks like. So when it comes to access in the mental health realm, I think the VA started to think outside the box. In 2018 to 2028, they came up with the national strategy for preventing veteran suicide. I don't know how many of you know about the stat, but it was up to, I believe, 22 veterans a day committing suicide. 22 veterans a day. And so what the VA started to do, hey, let's get some data on our veterans. What's going on? Where are we failing? You know, and this is what some of the strategies and the things that it takes to think outside of the box and say, hey, and listen to your veterans. Because when you see this, the VA was saying, hey, we're getting pressure from families. We're getting pressure from other veterans. And this is not looking good for us. So the VA started to think outside the box. And what ended up happening, the water started coming to the desert. In 2018, I was going through a lot once again on an island once again, because it was hard for me to maintain a normal job because PTSD symptoms were still flaring up. I was getting fired left and right. Even with my MBA, I was working at Chick-fil-A because I needed a position where I can come and go as I please, have a part-time schedule while I was still trying to fight for my benefits. I went to the hospital one day when I wasn't feeling like myself. I had ended up getting into some trouble and spent some time in a veterans court after a dispute with my sister in my house. And I told my doctor at the time, I said, if I go home, I'm not going to come back. I'm going to kill myself. And this is when, while using this, the VA said they had a new plan. Okay, this is happening often. We need to work on a way to fix this. So what they came out with are these suicide prevention plans. And I'm gonna read a few of my steps on my suicide prevention plan. If I start getting very withdrawn from everyone, that means that I'm drinking. I'm alone on the island and I'm just wasting away. And they gave me this plan. And number two, relying on alcohol to get by, not getting any sleep, started to ask why questions. And I started to talk to other veterans. Hey, have you heard about these suicide prevention plans? And everybody would say, no, never heard of that before. And I would share mine with them. And this is something that I had in 2018 and I still use to this day. Because for me, and a lot of other veterans who live on these isolated islands, and not only veterans, but everybody in Atlanta, members of NAMI and who aren't, I shared this with them, and at first they said, suicide prevention plan, I don't need that. But then once they started to read it, they started to realize, I do have some of these symptoms. I may need one. And so the VA started to help us out with these suicide prevention plans. And when I came back, I got a copy of it, and I put a copy in a safe at home and made sure that the people who were staying with me at the time had one, made sure that my mother had one, and I did my best to try to advocate for other people within the VA to say, hey, I know other veterans that need one of these as well. Because we get together and we drink, and it's not the best thing for me to try to talk somebody down off the ledge every single day. So these other veterans that I knew started to get these suicide prevention plans, and then what that leads to, the VA shows a decrease. That 22 a day is starting to go down. I believe now it's down to, I think, about 12 a day, 12 veterans a day, which is still too much. Let's not get it wrong, still too much, but the number now is coming down because just like in my survey before, the VA had data. Why are veterans committing suicide? What type of veterans are committing suicide? What type of people are having issues? What type of people in Atlanta are having issues that are veterans? Women, because in the VA or in Atlanta, there was a lot of sexual assault on both men and women as well, which was severely impacting the suicide rate. So collecting that data, the VA came out with these suicide prevention plans and had these results to say, hey, this is working. Lifesaver. Who is your lifesaver? This wonderful woman right here, my fiance, she was here with me, Nami, at NamiCon with me last year. And I proposed last year and she said yes. And but when it comes to, now I have a new person on the island, because when you're down in the dumps on these islands, and trust me, that one person that you need to go to, hey, I'm feeling suicidal. They need to act right away. And this is why we're called the Service Members and Families Council, because when we serve, they serve with us. But even if you're not a veteran, who's your lifesaver? Who can you think of right now if you're on a desert island alone with your mental health, no access to anything, who can just sit down with you and come up with a plan? Hey, what can we afford? If it's your wife, your husband, you may have a caregiver that's your mom, your dad, brother, sister, somebody that you can call that you know will always pick up the phone for you. Because when you're going through these things, I'm pretty sure there's people who won't pick up the phone because they know why you're calling. So if you just think, who's your lifesaver? Who can I think of to share my suicide prevention plan with? Who can say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be drinking. Maybe we don't need to go out tonight. Maybe we need to follow up with the doctor or find a new route, find a new method to help you. Maybe I can come with you too, Nami. Maybe I can be an instructor and do things with you. I know that it's worked tremendously for me. 37 years old now, and because of what I was going through, decided not to have any children, and now I have somebody and found the right person with me on my island that now we're gonna start a family. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. All right, I'm gonna show you guys a little something here. So bringing mental health care to the desert. Now, we know the issues. Now, how do we fix them? So I'm gonna play a little video for you, and you guys may see somebody you know in here.
Check it out. Check it. Check it. Check it out. Check it.
Well, I'm so excited to be here at Legends Barbershop. So just to give you a little history about the Confess Project, we were founded in 2016, working to train barbers to become mental health advocates. We recognized early on that the barbershop was a place where we could bring back and heal our communities. And so we're so excited as we work to get rid of the stigma around mental health, as we work to teach skills of active listening and positive communication.
Dante, thank you very much and appreciate your leadership. We're looking forward to doing even a wider partnership with the Confess Project and with you and your team. So looking forward to it.
So bringing mental health care to the desert. Now, we know the issues. Now, how do we fix them? For those of you who don't know about the Confess Project, we do have a partnership with them. The Confess Project is like self-explanatory. It's an organization that trains mental health, that barbers to be mental health advocates. You know, because a lot of people spend a lot of time in the barbershop. You know, if you see my hair, you know, talking about mental health deserts, you know, I got waves in my hair, you know, but to realize, so what Lorenzo did, Lorenzo is the owner, he started the Confess Project. And what he did, he noticed that young African Americans in his community will always spend time at the barbershop, get mentored at the barbershop. While they're grooming themselves, he thought to himself, well, why not train these barbers to help them feel beautiful on the inside as well? So now we have this great partnership with the Confess Project where you can sit down, have a great haircut, feel better, and also get filled with the tools that you need, whether you're male or female, because we also have a beautician or, you know, beauticians, and we're training more and more cosmetology professionals. So you can get your, you know how women say, you can get your face beat, your hair did, your nails done, and all those things at the same time while getting filled by someone trained in mental health. And those little things that just people who think outside the box think about, well, how can I bring mental health care to people in my community? And it's something as small as, well, somebody thought, well, why don't I train barbers to be mental health advocates? And if you think about it, what's the cost of going to see a therapist? $130, $140. And then the thing about, let's say that you are on a mental health desert. You get a sip of water. You're dehydrated the next minute. And with therapy, for it to work, it needs to be continuous. So not too many people can afford to go to therapy and spend $130 every single visit. But I can afford a $10 haircut. I may not get a diagnosis. I may not be prescribed medication, but I got what I need to make it through the week. And then next week, I can see him again. And not only will I see him again, I'll feel good about it. I'll feel good about myself as well. And what I did with Nami, we even worked with a few barbers to give them like scholarships. So for people who couldn't even afford haircuts, hey, we'll pay for your haircuts for you. Just go get what you need. Go get the help on your island. And so this is when Dan came down to Nami, but if you guys Google the Confess Project, they're all throughout the country as well. And now they're growing, starting to teach different, I think they're growing into so many different avenues when it comes to hair and cosmetology and just trying to think outside the box to get people the mental health care that they need.
Can I just ask, what are they trained to do?
So,
Barbers and then hairdressers.
okay, so really listening and understanding, because when you get a haircut, all we do is sit there and vent, talk about the week. You know, we just shoot the breeze with our barbers and we just talk. And so really teaching these barbers how to really kind of in a split second diagnose what they're going through. And it's just like really focusing on identifying issues with mental health. So I don't work directly with the Confess Project, so I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly. This video is on, I think it's on the NAMI website, or you can just pull it up on YouTube like we did earlier. I can't go into the specifics, but I can tell you what, when I get my haircut, I would talk to my barber. He talked me through my engagement, just getting engaged and being nervous. And it's just really, especially in a city like Atlanta, a lot of youth don't see a way out, and they turn to a life of crime or getting high and doing things like that. So, hey, let's teach these barbers how to teach people how to value themselves. Yeah, because trust me, in the city of Atlanta, whew, some parts you don't want to go to. I'm worried about my car right now, parked on Camp Creek. All right. But yeah, so it's just teaching these young, well, men, women, anybody how to advocate for themselves and really just get the help that.
Do they offer resources?
Oh yeah. They have pamphlets at the Confess Project, and then since they're associated with NAMI, they can come to us as well because everything within NAMI is free. Now, knowing when, where, who, what, why, how to advocate. Earlier we were talking about parity, and in Georgia a couple years ago we signed House Bill 1013, and what I did, came up with a simple plan. We all had signs made. What I'm going to do, because your desert may not be my desert. Your desert may not be my desert. We're all different people in the room, and we all have different mental health issues that we feel nobody may be paying attention to. So here's what I did on the biggest day for mental health in Georgia, I think this was 2022. Said, hey, I'm gonna make a sign and advocate for veterans. And Army, I don't think we had a Space Force back then, but with me being NAMI the Cab, I'm gonna let people know where I am, who I'm from, and what I'm here to support. And this was at the Georgia State Capitol. And what ended up happening over here, I got interviewed by everybody and just got to advocate with my little sign there and just talk about what I'm going through, what this bill means for me, what the symptoms are on my island, what I'm going through. And the bill got passed, and now I'm still able to go around, help other people, and teach them how to do things like this. Because we have 5 different news stations, and I think everybody was out there this day and knowing when to advocate. So that's knowing who your senators are, because we only seem to pay attention to what's going to happen in November for the presidential election. But the people who really make the change are your state senators, the people you can bother every single day. Like, we're still having this issue in DeKalb. Fulton County still having this issue. Gwinnett County still having this issue, until they say, okay, we hear you. So that's who to advocate to. When to advocate, when these people want your vote, hey, well, this is what we need from you as well. We need these things that's going on, because like in our slides earlier, we're losing people in our community to suicide and drug addiction. And because I can't afford mental health care, my son has to go get help at the barbershop, when we should be able to afford mental health care and get a proper diagnosis and get the medication that we need. So, and then who to advocate to. Most importantly, know who your people are in your state senators, people who really want to make the change. Because what I found out when we went here this day, they listen and they want your vote the next time. They most definitely will act. And if they don't act, we can go there again. We always have NAMI Day at the Capitol. And we go to the Georgia State Capitol and we get on the steps and advocate. And it's something that I've never, ever, ever experienced before. But what this day did, it got a bill passed. So now when I go to the doctor, with that example I used earlier with my broken arm, now I can say something's going on up here, and they just won't say, okay. Now in Georgia, they can sit you down and we can talk about, hey, let's talk about what's going on. How do you feel? Let's get you a proper diagnosis for whatever you're going through. And then ask those questions like, who's your lifesaver? Who's your caregiver? Because now we have this bill. Then where can we think collectively? Where do communities usually meet? Is it in the church? Is it in the community, in a college setting? In Atlanta, we have tons of different colleges. And those where the great minds meet and think about what is going on. What do I want my future to look like? Or in a church. Because in in the African American community, when I got home, my mom said, boy, ain't nothing wrong with you. You just need to pray. And we prayed and we prayed and we sang and we sang. And every time I answered the phone, it was Jesus on the main line. But I still had my issues. I still had my mental health issues. And so, you know, where can we think collectively? Church is where a lot of people go to get filled up, and there is spiritual healing as well. But then there's also time there to advocate. And back home in my church, we actually started a church in Rochester, Christ Community Church in Rochester, where we sat down and brought people in from the community who will provide services for an hour. Because, hey, I may not know what's going on with me, but if I have somebody, a member of my church who's a doctor, hey, Dr. Kendrick, would you mind staying after service for an hour? We have a congregation of people who have mental health concerns, and we think that you would be the person to talk to. Somebody that's already in your community, you already have the same shared religion, the same practices, and this is how communities come together and help each other. This is how we can come together and help each other. And then in colleges, we have these bright, young, so confused minds who want to protest about everything. They want to protest everything, but how can we make mental health look better for us? You know, so bringing these young minds together where we can think collectively and talk about what's really going on in my community. Because and like you said earlier, ma'am, asked me the question about veterans. My issues may not be yours. Your issues may not be mine. There's women who have different issues and all these different people who have a plethora of different mental health concerns and that they think nobody cares about. Nobody cares about. And for me, when you advocate, after I had my failed attempt, is when I advocated the most because I made it out. And I got together, this is back in 2012, with another group of veterans who had failed attempts. And we advocated and told the government where they failed. And the most important thing that I don't think a lot of these students understand is your message will get drowned in your anger. It'll get drowned. So bringing these young, bright minds together, thinking collectively is how we can bring access to mental health. Step one, find out the problem. What are people thirsty for? You may have the same mental health issue the person to your left or to your right do, but if you don't talk about them, advocate, you may never know. What are people thirsty for in your community? We have a lot of different states representing NAMI, Georgia, or NAMI here. So the issues that we have in Georgia may not be the issues in Florida, may not be the issues in Oregon or California, so on and so on. Number two, find out how to advocate. What do people meet in your community? Where can you have the biggest impact? Because going door to door, you're probably going to get doors slammed in your face. But where are people at already to make the work easier for you and your cause? Because your island, your desert, it may be small or maybe large. But in Atlanta, you know, we advocate through NAMI, and it's going to lead me to my third one here. We have to inspect for what you expect. So when we went to the state capitol and we passed House Bill 1013, and people were really starting to get the mental health care that they needed, now you have to make sure that the bill is passed. Now who's really taking advantage of it? Hold these people accountable. Holding doctors accountable. Just making sure that you inspect for what you expect. And that is my time. That is all I have. I do thank you for your time. Does anybody here have any questions for me?
I actually work for a private organization. We partner with NAMI, thankfully, but the issue that we have is we have a number of frontline employees who, when you tell them, hey, we've got things like NAMI, we've got our EAP, we've got health plans that have been approved, no matter what you tell them, they are just so busy because they're either choosing to work multiple shifts, they have kids or whatever, what have you. So when we put together, we've even worked with Alma to put together programming and education on how to advocate for yourself in the mental health space.
That is a great question, and I actually went through that myself, working for a Fortune 500 company in Atlanta. You have to let them know, look, there'll be no job to work if there's no you to work it. You know, when I was moving up in this organization, I was getting my MBA, and I was striving to be the #1 person in this work, in this call center, until I was burnt out. And then I had an incident, that 2018 incident, said, hey, I don't feel like myself. And they made me take a vacation. But I think just stressing the importance of, look, these programs are here to help you. They're not here to prevent you from moving forward. And if there's somebody like me, this isn't gonna have any type of negative impact on your position here. If anything, it'll make you look stronger because you know when you're overwhelmed. Because when you're overwhelmed at the top, your performance is gonna impact everybody below you. Especially when I was back in my call center. So I would let them know that, hey, look, these programs are here for you. They're not going to harm you, or nobody's going to talk about you in any way, you know, but just letting them know the importance of the programs and what they're for, or what you can do. You can scan this QR code and have me come out to your company and speak to them. And but sometimes people just need to hear that from someone else. They just need to hear the benefits of using EAP, because as a veteran, I never worked a civilian job. So when I was put on leave, I didn't even know what FMLA was. I didn't know what EAP was. I thought this was a slow way for me to get fired. That's what I thought it was. So they didn't have to pack up myself in a box. They could just fire me from home. So just let them know the importance of what these programs are, and you can give them my information, because we're stubborn and we need to hear it from somebody else. There's a question down here.
Yes, down here. I wanted to know, so I work with farmers, so I'm the mental health director for Southern University Ag Center. I've seen a need for more mental health access in rural communities. I wanted to know, when it comes to the suicide rates in those rural areas, we all know that that's about 3 times the rate in urban areas. Is NAMI planning on pushing out any information to directly support those populations?
Ooh, I'm not sure about what NAMI is doing, but
What's Georgia doing?
well, we do have a lot of we have some suburbs that are hard to reach, and I'm not sure what the state office is doing. But what I can think of right now is setting up some satellite treatment for them. Get if they're not even doctors, set up some satellite hours or something like that, where people can call in or advocate for like I said earlier, get the data. Why are people in this rural area? What's going on with farmers that they're committing suicide? I know that we only hear about farmers during election year, how they're the backbone of America. Yeah. Well, you know, your back needs that bone all year, just not during election season. So that's why I was saying earlier, hey, get people together, let them know what they need to advocate for. And it may be the lifesavers, the survivors that may have to advocate for them, for those farmers. This is what my farmer was going through and didn't know how to say it. And you can get wives or husbands of people who survived, or who committed suicide. Say, hey, this is what my person was going through, and bring that attention to those people who are in the city so they can come out in those rural areas. Because the thing about the rural areas they're rural. So nobody wants to go out there, and they think that if you live in a rural area, you can afford to live out there, so you got whatever you want.
So I'm from Kansas, and we have not just rural areas, but we have what's called frontier, which is less than rural, and access to care in those areas is like 0, and like she said, farmer suicide rates are going up. So using your method and process you went through, and this confess, I could see that moving into rural areas.
Bring that access to Kansas. Let them know we're not in Kansas anymore, baby. This is brand new Kansas.
It's that same issue in Nebraska, where we have, there's little to no mental health care available west of Lincoln, which is about a 7-hour drive across the state. And we only have one VA, which is in Omaha. So we have one VA for an entire state. So if you're a veteran suffering out west, you have at least, it's very easy to have a 7-8 hour drive just to access health care.
Make them work for you. Make them politicians work.
Rural. I'm from Wyoming. I'm the ombudsman for mental health in the entire state, so I cover the whole state. I'm feeling pretty proud of us right now. We have a Veterans Talk to Veterans program that started 2 years ago that's spreading throughout the state. So these are veterans who, and they don't even tell stories. It's a Veterans Talk to Veterans. They get together and, like your barbershops type of thing. But they have coaches, so they have a year of coaching veterans to learn how to do this.
Right.
The other thing we have is an agricultural stress line, hotline for all the agriculture and ranchers, because we have very remote areas. So there's scholarships and funding for our ranchers and our farmers to get their mental health paid for. That our governors, we're doing the mental health, it's all mental health awareness through the state of Wyoming. So it's definitely rural, and there's a very limited services for anybody to get to, but we are working on it.
Yeah, because
there are services out there.
Something I can think of off the top of my head, I mean, farms are pretty huge, right? Maybe you can get an entire collection of farmers together, collaborate on what's going on in our issues, in your state, respective states, so you can take that data to your state representatives and say, hey, we need these services out here because you guys are feeding your states, but we need you to feed us as well. Feed us the services that we need to help keep us alive so we can do our jobs of feeding America.